The feeling of self-blame is like stepping into a dark, shadowy room where you are your own worst critic, your own harshest enemy. It's a battle that feels deeply personal, yet strangely universal. Self-blame doesn't just visit, it lingers, whispering doubts, amplifying insecurities, and distorting your sense of reality. Think about it. Every mistake you've ever made, every regret you've ever felt, seems to take on a life of its own, haunting your thoughts like an ever-present shadow. It's almost as if you're fighting a dark, malevolent force. A force that knows you better than you know yourself. This force, much like Voldemort in the Harry Potter series, feeds on your fears, your guilt, and your self-doubt. It convinces you that you're the villain in your own story, even when the blame isn't yours to bear. But what makes this battle so insidious is that it's internal. It's not a fight against an external enemy, it's a fight within your own mind. A fight against a version of yourself that refuses to forgive, refuses to let go. And just like Voldemort, this inner critic thrives in secrecy, growing stronger in silence, in the quiet moments when you're left alone with your thoughts. Self-blame is cunning. It disguises itself as responsibility, as if by taking on all the guilt, you're somehow fixing the problem. But that's an illusion. It's like Voldemort creating Horcruxes, splitting his soul into fragments to protect himself, only to make himself weaker and more vulnerable in the process. When you blame yourself for things beyond your control, you're fragmenting your sense of self, tearing apart the parts of you that deserve compassion and understanding. It's not strength, it's self-destruction. Think about how Voldemort preyed on Harry's mind, planting seeds of doubt, making him question his worth, his purpose. Self-blame does the same. It distorts your memories, turning mistakes into monumental failures and isolating you from the truth. You start to carry burdens that were never meant to be yours, replaying scenarios in your head with a cruel, unforgiving lens. And just like Harry had to face his fears in the Forbidden Forest, you find yourself walking into your own mental battlefield, unsure of whether you'll emerge unscathed. But here's the twist. This fight isn't about winning or losing. It's about recognizing that your inner Voldemort, your self-blame, thrives on your silence, on your unwillingness to challenge it. The more you internalize it, the more power it gains. And just like in the wizarding world, the antidote to this darkness lies not in avoidance, but in facing it with courage, truth, and self-compassion. Imagine your self-blame taking on a physical form, a shadowy, relentless figure whispering accusations in your ear. Picture it as a twisted version of yourself, darker, sharper, with piercing eyes that seem to know every mistake, every regret. It doesn't need to shout. Its voice is quiet, but it cuts through everything else, relentless in its attack. It's always there, lurking in the corners of your mind, waiting for moments of vulnerability to pounce. You try to ignore it, but the more you resist, the stronger it seems to become, just like Voldemort's influence growing as fear and despair spread. Now, let's go deeper. This inner Voldemort isn't just attacking your actions, it attacks your worth. It convinces you that every mistake you've made isn't just a flaw, but a reflection of who you are at your core. You spilled coffee on a coworker? That's not just clumsiness, it's proof you're incompetent. You forgot a friend's birthday? That's not forgetfulness, it's evidence you're a bad person. Each small incident becomes a weapon, sharpened and used against you by this shadowy figure. This figure doesn't just criticize, it manipulates. It makes you believe that blaming yourself is productive, that it's the only way to fix things or prevent future mistakes. But here's the irony. Self-blame isn't empowering, it's paralyzing. It's like standing in front of the mirror of Erised, seeing your deepest fears reflected back at you and mistaking them for your destiny. You're trapped in a cycle of guilt, unable to move forward because you're too busy punishing yourself for the past. But what if we could change the narrative? What if instead of fighting this shadowy figure, you turned toward it? What if instead of running from it or arguing with it, you simply acknowledged it? You said, I see you, I hear you, but you're not the whole story. And imagine how disarming that would be. This figure, this inner Voldemort, feeds on resistance, on your attempts to push it away. When you stop fighting and start listening, its power begins to wane. And here's the real secret. Just like Harry didn't defeat Voldemort alone, you don't have to face your inner critic alone. You have allies, friends, family, therapists, or even the wisdom of your own past experiences. They're your Dumbledores, your Hermiones, your Rons. They remind you that you are more than your mistakes, more than your self-doubt. Together, they help you build a new narrative, one where you're not the villain of your story, but the hero who faces their fears and emerges stronger. Self-blame doesn't just attack your mind. It seeps into your identity. It convinces you that your mistakes define you, weaving a narrative where you're the villain of your own life. Imagine carrying that weight daily, as though your very existence is wrapped in a heavy, suffocating cloak of guilt. This is your inner Voldemort's ultimate power, turning you against yourself, making you believe that redemption is out of reach. But just like in the wizarding world, there's magic in self-awareness. When Harry realized Voldemort could invade his thoughts, his first step wasn't to push it away, it was to understand it. Self-blame works the same way. It thrives in the dark corners of your mind, feeding on your silence and shame. The more you try to suppress it, the louder it becomes. But when you shine a light on it, when you call it out for what it is, it begins to lose its grip. Take a moment to reflect. How often do you find yourself replaying old mistakes, magnifying their impact until they feel unbearable? This mental loop is the equivalent of Voldemort's Horcruxes, pieces of your peace, splintered and hidden in the cracks of your self-perception. Each time you dwell on your failures without offering yourself grace, you give this inner villain more power. But here's the truth. Just as Harry and his friends sought and destroyed the Horcruxes, you can dismantle the narrative of self-blame piece by piece. Start by questioning the stories you tell yourself. When self-blame whispers, "You'll never be good enough," counter it with, "Who says?" When it sneers, "You always mess up," respond with evidence of your successes, no matter how small. Imagine these moments as battles in your personal war against this inner darkness, where each act of self-compassion is a spell breaking its hold on you. And don't underestimate the power of speaking your struggles out loud. Self-blame wants you to believe you're alone, that no one else could possibly understand the weight you carry. But the moment you share your feelings, whether with a trusted friend, a therapist, or even a journal, you take back some of the power it has over you. You remind yourself that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength. It's how you reclaim the parts of yourself that self-blame has tried to steal. Remember, even Harry Potter, the boy who lived, needed help to face his greatest fears. You're no different. The people around you, the resources available to you, they're your magical tools and allies. Use them to build resilience, to remind yourself that you are not your mistakes. You are so much more. And every time you choose self-compassion over self-blame, you're winning a battle your inner Voldemort thought it had already won. So, what happens when you finally face your inner Voldemort? What does victory look like in this battle against self-blame? It's not about erasing the mistakes of your past or silencing every critical thought forever. Instead, it's about reclaiming your narrative, becoming the person who acknowledges their flaws but refuses to be defined by them. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, seeing yourself clearly, not as the villain, but as a human being capable of growth, change, and redemption. Self-blame is persuasive, but its power crumbles the moment you recognize it for what it truly is, a distortion of reality, not reality itself. Think of Harry's final confrontation with Voldemort. He didn't win because he was flawless or invincible. He won because he understood that his strength came from love, courage, and the connections he had built. You can do the same. Your strength lies in your ability to show yourself the same compassion you'd offer a friend. To forgive yourself not just for the big mistakes, but for the tiny human ones we all make. The journey to overcoming self-blame is not a straight line. Some days, it will feel like you're making progress, and others will pull you back into old patterns. That's okay. The important thing is to keep moving forward, to keep dismantling the false narratives that self-blame tries to sell you. Each step forward is a victory. Each act of self-compassion a light in the darkness. Now here's the question I want you to think about. What would your life look like if you chose to treat yourself with the same kindness you reserve for others? Imagine how much lighter you'd feel, how much freer. And when you start to hear that familiar voice of self-blame creeping in, ask yourself, is this helping me or is it holding me back? If this video resonated with you, share it with someone who might be fighting their own inner battles. Let's start a conversation about self-compassion and break the silence that self-blame feeds on. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future content designed to inspire and empower. Together, we can face our inner Voldemorts and rewrite the story.